Okay, so let us recall some of the research report content. So as you are aware that we are almost reaching the last step of the research process, that is writing research report. First, let us understand what is research report, what are the different types of research report, what are the precautions we require to take before presenting the content to the research report, and how which heading or which title which comes first and later in the sequence order it need to be followed, and if any template reports are available we can follow them, like IEEE format, etc., and so on. So in yesterday, I was shared the IEEE format as a case study material. Please go through that format. Try to remember the values which you are going to design the report. Usually, the report having the A4 sheet paper, A4 sheet paper. Sometimes it is a running text will be there. Sometimes it is a two columnar text will be there. So again depends on the journal and publishers. You require to be formatted. So now let us understand as it is given in the textbook. We will understand what is actually the research report. So already we discussed about the what is research report. So significance of research report. So what is the significance? The significance is that whatever you done, the research work, it should be make understandable to the readers. That is the ultimate goal of the research. So making your work known to the universe is the main objective of the writing research report. And whatever you do research report, if you won't give the much importance to the writing the report, then whatever you do the good work, that will not reachable to the maximum audience. If it is not reachable, you are not going to get the returns from them. So returns in the form of the monetary benefits or the promotions or anything else in your professional career. Okay, these things we discussed in the previous class itself. Now I am going to discuss about the layout of the research report. Suppose anybody who is reading the research report, either it's an experienced reader or the newbie of the research, they must be conveyed enough about the study so that he can place it in its generic scientific context, judge the adequacy of its methods, and thus form an opinion of how seriously the findings are to be taken. So by reading into your research report, suppose if you have already you submitted the seminar report, right? If I go through with the reading of your seminar report, I may come to the conclusion that whether you done some good work while writing the seminar report and all, or just you made the copycat kind of things. So as a reader, I will come to know that seriousness of the researcher who has given the information in the report. Okay, so for this purpose, as a researcher, you should know aware of it how you require to be create the research report that will be understandable by the reader. The layout of the report means as to what the research report should contain. So what is the content? The first preliminary pages, main text, and the end matter. Usually the preliminary pages, I'll give one example for preliminary pages. Is this PDF copy is visible to you? PDF is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Ha. See, once the textbook is open, if it is a report in the form, first set is forward. Some copyright content will be displayed in the first page, first sheet of the book, publication. Then, uh, in loving of memory, so and so, to remember the persons who has helped in the family, that page will be the preliminary page. And one more, say, preface to the second edition. If the earlier edition exists, if he is trying to write the second edition, preface, that is munnudi anta kariತೀವಿ kannadadalli, preface of that second edition. He has written who are all helped, encouraged him to write this edition of the book, etc., and so on. And also he has highlighted, author has highlighted some of the points relevant to the second edition. So, and also he has mentioned the place and date of writing of this preface edition. This is also called as preliminary page. So, preface to first edition, earlier he was made for the first edition, that is retained as it is. This is again, it is a preliminary page for this book. And the next preliminary page is contents page. Content include all the main titles along with subtitles along with the page number it specified. And you can look after ending of the book, appendix is added additional material which supports to for the reader. It is added here as an appendix page, and selected references and recommended readings. Additional material is given under that appendix page, and author index and subject index also given as a along with the page numbers are given in the preliminary pages. Okay, and also you can observe the main title. It is main title of a chapter. It is begin with the number along with the name of the chapter. So even though there is a blank space between, even though even though there is a little more blank space in the previous page, the chapter won't start from that page. The chapter is begin from the new fresh page with the chapter number and the main title of the chapter number. So even though if you go with the second unit, second chapter, so even though in the previous page there is a small blank page, the second chapter not yet begun in that page, but it's begin from the fresh page. Okay, this is the layout they have a form for the book writing. Book writing is also similar to the report writing, depending on the context and requirement of the researcher. Okay, also you might observe here at the bottom of the page, so there is a number with some of the references is given. This is called as footnote. Somewhere this is used here in this current page. RL Akoff, the design of social research design. So the author referred some of the content of this in the current page. So he has used here. He has used here. You can notice that here. You can notice that components apostrophe 1 is there. So means these content was given from the author. That author reference is given in the same page wherever it is referred. This is called as footnote. Okay, understood? So we are discussing the preliminary pages, the main text, and the end matter. It is described in the form of statements here. So, preliminary pages, which are the content of preliminary pages. The preliminary pages should carry a little title and date of the publication, followed by acknowledgement, that is thanks to the family, thanks to the friends, thanks to the teachers, etc. and so on, in the form of preface or foreword. So just now you have observed in the textbook, preface was found for second edition as well as the first edition, right? Then there should be a table of contents. Just now you have seen the book content, main title, research methodology, subtitles, what is research, significance of research, etc. and so on. You are able to found it. Then there should be a table of content followed by list of tables and illustrations, so that the decision maker or anybody interested in reading in the report can easily locate the required information in the report. So by looking into the index page, that is the contents page, you are able to understand. Suppose if you are interested in reading the only the report writing and interpretation, so rather than the searching page by page, just you can locate exactly where that report writing. For example, if you want to locate the report writing, just instead of searching one page at a time, you can search for the report writing in the content page. You can find the what is the page number of report writing, 344. So then you can directly navigate to 344th page number. Then you are going to get this interpretation and report writing. Okay. So the second layout of that report is main text. Usually the main text consists of the information about the chapters, etc. and so on. So the main text is, it provides the complete outline of the research report along with all details. Title of the research study is repeated at the top of the first page. You can observe that in the textbook, usually in the report especially, you can observe here research methodology. It's a chapter name. It is repeated even though it is started beginning at the chapter, it has given in the main title. So in the second sheet onwards, so you are able to get which chapter you are reading. Instead of moving back again and again to check the title of the main heading of that chapter, so you can quickly refer in the every sheet. So it is repeated till it completion of that particular chapter. Each main section of the report should begin on a new page, as we just now observed in that textbook. The main text of the report should have the following sections. So the following section, it has the introduction. You can observe that introduction part. So meaning of research is the interest. See, observe here an introduction. Research methodology is the chapter name, and an introduction. Introduction is the first section of the report. Then statements of findings and recommendations. So what is research? What is the meaning of research, objective of motivation, types of research, and so on. Those are the statements of findings and recommendations. If you, instead of it is a book I am comparing. Suppose if I open the research paper, let us see one research paper. For your reference, I am opening one research paper. Here. Yeah. If I open the research paper, introduction is the first chapter. Then second chapter is importance of cybersecurity data set for machine learning. That is findings and recommendation. For the reader, it will give the recommendation to read about the data set of the machine learning. Also, it tells the importance of that topic of interest, which has given as a title, that is machine learning and cyber security, right? Then the results, after statement of findings and recommendation, results will be discussed from the researcher. He has to write about the results. Then implications drawn from the results, if any charts, any graphs, if any tabular format representation of data, any mathematical equations if you are following, if any algorithms is used, all such algorithms etc are writing in the results, as well as the inference where you are drawing from that results are to be written in the research report. And finally, the summary is it includes the conclusion part and the future enhancement part. So you can refer this paper, you can observe this. Some of the mathematical algorithms are used for the machine learning techniques, also defined in this. Some of the tabular forms are there to represent some data sets which is used for the cyber security, etc. and so on. So which are the algorithms are used for in the paper also written, and you can observe the tabular representations. All these results and discussions are made from the researcher, and he was able to infer some of the results through and representing those in the form of the statistical analysis like graphs, line chart, and line graph, etc. He has used, and at the last he is going to give the conclusion, if it is a research report, summary will be used for conclusion of the entire research work being done by the researcher, or the conclusion is used for the conclusion acknowledgement and references are used for the writing research report. Okay, so main text, it itself include introduction, statement of findings and recommendations, results, implications drawn from the results, and the summary. Any questions are there with respect to this?
No, sir.
Understood, right?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So it is given clearly line by line about what I explained with the help of the example. If you have get a time, you just go through this, or if you want to me to go through the individual slide also, I will discuss. So the purpose of introduction is to introduce the research projects to the reader, as I said, and the introduction part should contain a clear statement of the objective of research. What was the objective? What is the motivation behind the research? Such kind of information you have to be written under the title of introduction. Enough background, that is literature survey you require to write. Enough background should be given to make clear to the reader why the problem was considered worth investigating, why you have selected that problem, what was the motivation. You require to give the in-depth detail about the topic of your interest, which it is going to be carried out as a research. So you need to be give the complete information about that. That's why I was expected you to download at least 20 papers. The reason is that if you do the extensive literature, you will come to know the better understanding of that particular problem which you are interested to solve. So it is not 2020. There is no measurement for downloading or referring the research literature papers. So since we have a short period of time, so we can refer at least 20 papers. Among that 20, which around 5 to 10 papers which are relevant to your research work, you refine them and you start studying. So from those studying those 5 or 6 papers, you are able to write the sufficient background knowledge about your topic of your interest, right? A brief summary of other relevant research may also be stated, so that The present study can be seen in that context. When you are writing the previous researchers done the literature review, you will come to know what is the gap exist. So that is you will able to identify the continuation of your work. Where can I address to solve the problem? So by knowing the earlier literature, the hypothesis of study, if any hypothesis, if you are defining, and the definition of major concepts employed in the study, like in this paper, major concepts are algorithms. Some of the predefined algorithms like artificial neural networks, inducible learning, inductive learning, hidden Markov models, some decision trees. These algorithms have the more importance in machine learning. So such kind of concepts you are going to redefine under your research study of hypothesis of the study, right? So you are going to write that in the introduction title. So in continuation of the introduction, the methodology adopted in conducting the study must be fully explained. So what kind of the data you are collecting? What is the procedure of collecting data? Which method of data collection you are used? Who are the collector of the data? Any biases are there in collecting? Any classification of data? The methodology which you are using? All such information in brief, not in detail. In brief, you are going to discuss under the introduction part. The scientific reader would like to know in detail about such thing. How was the study carried out? How you are carrying the study? Either you are a part-time researcher or a full-time researcher, or just a Navy researcher, or just for your interest you are going to read the content, etc. and so on. So how was the study carried out? What was its basic design? If the study was an experimental one, then what were the experimental manipulations? All those information you are collecting and writing in your own words under the introduction part. If you are collecting the data, whether it is collecting through questionnaires or observations or through interviews, then exactly what questions were asked, all the in detail information in brief again you are providing under the section of heading of the introduction. Then, in addition to those, if any measurements were based on observation, you are recording them also. What instructions were given to the observers? Suppose if you are taking a third-party service of data collection, if you frame the questionnaires, you need to explicitly give the which are the questions were asked for the respondents. If you are using the third-party service, which are so you need to collect about what are the instructions you are given to the observers to observe the points of study, etc. and so on. You are briefly you are discussing under the introduction. So suppose if any samples are used, then you need to exclusively tell about who are the subjects. Who are the subjects? Either a population is the subject, or the material is the subject, or the subject itself is the subject. So how many were there? Whether you are doing the comparative analysis or comparative study, then quantitative analysis is required to do here. So in that case, you need to write the corresponding those statements in brief under the introduction chapter. How are they selected? On what basis you selected those sampling methods? You need to have an answer yourself before presenting to the reader. All these questions are crucial for estimating the probable limits of generalizability of the findings. So if you are able to define or clearly tell about all these things under the introduction part, so the new reader who is reading your report, they will come to understand that yes, this researcher has been done some good work. He was having a clarity about his research work, then the new reader will able to understand his readings, and also he will continue to read your paper till the conclusion part, because he is going to get the interest on reading, because all these in detail information you are given under the report writing chapter, that is introduction. The statistical analysis adopted must also be clearly stated which methods are used. So, for you as a RM course, statistical samplings are statistical methods are actually it is not included in your discussion. But if any needed, if it is found as a researcher, you can include them also in the introduction chapter. In addition to all this above information, the scope of the study should be stated and the boundary lines be demarcated. So you need to be fixed boundary. You need to fix traffic problem. What is the you need to specific. You can solve the traffic problem for Bangalore city. You cannot generalize. It works in Mangalore. It works in Chennai. It works in Hyderabad, it works in Delhi. You cannot generalize that traffic pump, because the constraints parameters are different. Bangalore roads are different, constructions are different, maintenance is different. The space of the roads also matters here. So you cannot generalize this problem. The boundary is, you can choose a boundary is a particular city. You are limiting your the research work for a particular city, right? The various limitations, if any limitations are there in your carrying the research work, you need to be exclusively stated in the introduction part. By reading into the introduction itself, the reader will able to understand that whether he is interested in this paper to continue reading, and if any information it is useful for him while reading your paper, he may going to cite you in his paper as an acknowledgement. Definitely he will acknowledge you about the your work if you give these things in detail. The first one is the preliminary pages. The second one is main. Under the main, the first one is first section is introduction. The second section is statements of findings and recommendations. So after introduction, the research report must contain a statement of findings and recommendations in non-technical language. This is highlighted here. Non-technical language means simple English needs to be used to describe about your research work. Non-technical language. So here in the beginning itself, if you are using the technical language, then it is difficult for a normal user to understand the work being done by you. So in the after introduction, you need to be use the simple English to make you understand the readers. If the findings happen to be extensive at this point, they should be put in the summarized form. So here statements of findings and recommendations. If you giving recommendation to read extra material to other readers, you can mention there itself under this heading, that is statement of findings and recommendations. Then the third section of the introduction part is the results. Not introduction part, it's a layout report. The third is results. So in that results, which a detailed presentation of the findings of the study. So you are able to find that in this paper. Detailed description about the after introduction, some findings are referred and some recommendations are given to the reader. Then in the chapter 3, detail about this machine learning techniques for cyber security. All the in detail techniques about the algorithms and all those things are discussed in this paper under the chapter 3. See the chapter 4 recommendations for anomaly detection. Again, it is a in detail study about that. Okay, then a detailed presentation of the findings of the study with supporting data in the form of tables and charts together with a validation of results is the next step in writing the main text of the report. So introduction, then findings and recommendations, then result. This generally comprises the main body of the report extending over several chapters. You can observe in this paper several chapters are present. Fourth chapter, third chapter, fifth chapter is present. That results and discussions. The result section of the report should contain statistical summaries and reductions of the data rather than the raw data. So you can find here the reductions of the data in the form of it is not a raw data. It is a statistical data. After analysis, he is going to present the content in this. And also it consists of statistical summaries like normal attacks, for example 61,156, it's a count, a navy malicious response injection, some count. So he has representing the content in the statistical summaries and reductions of data rather than the raw. All the results should be presented in logical sequence and splitted into readily identifiable section. By looking into these sections, you can able to easily differentiate this chapter. Fourth chapter is recommendation for anomaly detection. Fifth chapter is for evaluation of ML algorithms and Modbus data, etc. and so on. You clearly able to distinctly identify the data which is used in the research process. And the results, all relevant results must find a place in the report, but how one is to decide about what is relevant is the basic question. As a researcher, which whether it is very interesting, whether if you are going to write every minute detail of your research work, it may go end up with 500 papers, 500 pages. So if you are downloading a paper, it is most of the time it is not more than 12 papers, 12 pages, because they are limiting the number of pages. Otherwise, what happens? The reader may lose the interest on reading your research report. That's why minute details are somehow it is written. It is up to the researcher at what level of minute details need to be included in his report, right? But he has to give the clarity for the research. By hiding something, you should it should not deviate the research report format. So format and meaning, you need to clearly explain about your research findings, but it is up to you at what level you are going to disclose the content. Quite often, guidance comes primarily from the research problem and from the hypothesis, if any, with which the study was concerned. So it is up to the researcher to give the minute detail about his research findings in his report. But ultimately, the researcher must rely on his own judgment in deciding the outline of his report. So it is up to the researcher who is writing the research report. It is up to him at what extent he is going to provide the content for the report and research report. Right. Nevertheless, it is still necessary that he states clearly the problem with which he was concerned. As I said in the beginning itself, it is up to the researcher whether he has to clearly state about his problem. In providing the minute detail of the research, it is up to the researcher at what extent he can disclose that minute in detail of his research finding. It is up to the research. Again, it is depend on the own decision of the researcher. Okay. So once results is discussed in the research report, then you are trying to infer some of the implication drawn from the results. Toward the end of the main text, the researcher should again put down the results of his research clearly and precisely. After elaborating the long writings about the results, now one or two paragraph you require to summarize the results what you have done so far using so and so algorithm methodology applied etc and so on after applying the mathematical model or the statistical model depending on the which different type of the models and all you are ultimately you are required to write the small paragraph because many readers not interested to read the lengthy articles lengthy reports so some readers are interested in only finding knowing about the exact result what you are going to infer from your entire whole research finding. In that case, you need to provide the some of the implications drawn from the results. It states that implications that flow from the results of the study for the general reader is interested in the implications for understanding the human behavior. How you did your research work, what was the measures you taken, what was the hypothesis you defined, what was the methodology used, what was the data collection methods you applied. So different any sampling study you made, any observations you made, any interviews are made, any surveys you made, all after collecting data, how you pre-process the data. Is there any methodology used to pre-process the data? After experiment, if it is experimental study, after obtaining the experiment, repeated experiment, what was the result? Is there any error rate in the result? All such description you are giving under one or two paragraph in this implications. Usually in the implications, what and all you are going to draw is a statement of the inferences drawn from the present study, which may be expected to apply in similar circumstances. Suppose if you are studied the traffic problem in the city, Bangalore city. So if that work is being completed by you, you are trying to apply the same study what you made for Bangalore. You are trying to apply in Mysore region it may or may not work by having little modification or entire scenario you can going to change. So it depends on if already you conducted the experiment. It if it is working for the city Bangalore, it might work for the Mysore also. There is a similarities are there. So in such cases, you can use this for similar circumstances. You can apply the same study what you made for the current scope. The second is the conditions of the present study, which may limit the extent of legitimate generalization of the inferences drawn from the study. Suppose if you made the study for the Yelahanka junction, if you are trying to apply the same study for maybe the Silk Board junction, you may try to apply the same study for some Marathali junction. In the same city, different sampling you selected, you are trying to generalize your work. If you apply these kind of solutions to those junctions, it may reduce the traffic congestion, etc. and so on. Right. The relevant questions that still remain unanswered are new questions raised by the study along with suggestions for the kind of research that would provide answers for them. So there is a possibility because research is not it is not and every end of the research will have a new beginning. That is called as research. Suppose the one person who is ending his research now means for the ending of that research is the new beginning of the new researcher, right? Always the research will have a lot of questions to be get answer for them, right? So it is considered a good practice to finish the report with a short conclusion which summaries and recapitulates the main points of the study. Almost all in the introduction you've given in detail. In the second part, that is similarities and findings, recommendations and findings. In that section, you've given the in detail information about your research topic in the non-formal, non-technical language. Then after that, you discussed about the results elaborately in the lengthier chapters. Then after that, you selected the implications. So in the implication, it is recommended that gist of entire work being done by you in the technical words you need to be explained here. The conclusion drawn from the study should be clearly related to the hypothesis that was stated in the introductory section. In the introductory section, whatever you defined hypothesis for experimental studies, so that should be matched here in the conclusion part. If you define something in the beginning, if you are writing conclusion something else, if there is no connectivity in report opening and closing, then that report is not at all a good report. At the same time, a forecast of the probable future of the subject and an indication of the kind of research which needs to be done in that particular field is useful and desirable. So usually you must give the summarized information in the implication drawn from the results section. So the lastly, that is the summary section. Usually the summary section which will give the conclude the research report with a very brief summary, resting in brief the research problem, the methodology, the major findings, and the major conclusions drawn from the research results. Usually in the conclusion part, what and all you require to give. So there should be a connectivity from the introduction to the conclusion. In brief, major findings you need to be exclusively defined under the summary section of the report. Is there any question? Is there any questions?
No, sir.
Clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So by looking into this paper itself, you are able to understand what way we should write the reports. It's a technical paper. It is a technical paper. So types of reports: technical report and popular report. Here what you are just now seen, it is a technical report. Popular reports are those reports which usually write for the government reports, governmental reports. So suppose PWD, public works department, have done some work to provide the report. Usually they will provide the report in the form of statistical 1 or 2 pages of the information. That's also a report type. We'll discuss more about the technical report and popular report in the next class. As of now, let us understand the brief about the types of report. Usually the reports vary in their length and the type. So we will discuss types of report, technical report and the popular report in later, in some other session. But today, let us understand how many different types of reports are there in this world. So depending on the context and the requirement of the authors, reports is going to be created by the researchers, right? So probably you heard about some business reports. Usually the business reports in the form of letter form, just 1 or 2 pages in length. So suppose give the summary of the sales information of this month. That is a business report. Usually business, it involves selling and buying. If you are generating quarterly reports, monthly reports, weekly reports, half yearly reports, annual reports, usually businesses reports which will have 1 or 2 pages of the report information. Report content is what is the style of reporting? Usually statistical style. The second kind of the reports, like banks also generating report, like balance sheets, assets and liabilities, that's also a report type. Insurance organizations, how many number of people applied for the claiming the insurance, how many claims are settled in this quarter month or the half year, such reports are can be generated. Financial institutions like banking, how many crores of money lending happen, how many debt are there, how many liabilities are there, etc. And so such information about the financial reports can be generated. Usually short balance sheet type, that is assets and liabilities, annual reports to their customers and shareholder. Suppose if you are buying a share of a State Bank of India, where exactly you are looking, whether you are looking the building of SBI Bank, or the number of branches it has, or the turnover of the bank it has, or the assets and liabilities of the bank. So usually shareholders will look the recent reports of the progress of the bank. Based on that, they are buying the shares of the banks or finance or institutions, right? So customers will going to deposit on what basis they are searching for the report of the banks, whether they are debt for the customers or they are credit for the customers. If they are credit for the customer is interested to deposit their money in their banks. If they are debt for the customer, definitely the customer will deviate in the depositing to their banks. Okay, so based on reports only, depending on the context of the situation, the reports are different types are there. So in the third kind of the reports are mathematicians prefer to write the results of their investigation in the form of algebraic notation. So y equal to x square plus 2. So it's an algebraic notation. So generalized form, right? Mathematicians they use us usually representation in the form of so NC2. That is a statistical combination, a general representation, right? NPM, NCN, all those things. And the chemical reports, there are their symbols and formula. Usually in the chemical reports, they usually used symbols and formula in their reports. Students usually they will do literature, write long reports presenting the critical analysis of some writer or period or the like, with a liberal use of quotations from the works of the author under discussion. And so you just recall the seminar report you have submitted to us. Usually what you done is you are read some content from the earlier papers. Usually you made the analysis, so whichever the statements are required for your research study or the seminar report, you have only taken from them and you reorganize them and you are submitting as a report of yours, right? Usually students will do that one. So the next is the in the field of education and psychology. The favorite form is the report on the results of experimentation accompanied by the detailed statistical tabulations. Usually in behavioral study and in the educational field, usually we are presenting the report in the form of tabular. So what is the internal IA test 1 marks? How we are displaying? It's in the form of tabular. So first name, serial number, second column is the person, third column is the student name, fourth column is test 1, fifth column is test 2, sixth column is test 3, average of 3, assignments, final results. The results which will be displayed in the form of tabular format, right? And clinical psychologists and social pathologists use as necessary to make use of case history form. So usually when you go for the clinical diagnosis, they will ask you whether you had a fever, from how long days you having the fever, how long you having a cough, etc. And so a history of the data they want for their decision making. So they will rely on the past of the patient, right? That's also a one kind of the report. So another set of the reports are news items in the daily papers are also forms of report writing, right? So daily papers, so if you look into Deccan Herald or Times of India or the Bangalore Times or the Vijay Karnataka, if it is any language, it might be any language, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, whatever the language, the newspaper content again it is in the form of report. They are reporting in such a way that so and so event happened in this area. The chief guest was so and so. He was given the highlights to the public to maintain distance for pandemic, so and so. So they are giving a report to the public. So newspaper also have a reporting style. So usually reporting style is in the most of us, if we don't have a time to read the entire content of the newspaper, what we are going to read? Headlines, highlights of the newspapers. So highlights usually the most important highlights. If you first that is called as first hand on the scene. So yeah, usually gradually they are given. For more detail, you turn over the page to the page number 8, turn over the page to the 10. If you are still interested to read the entire content of that paragraph, so extended is given inside the newspaper. Otherwise, most of the time, front page itself, which will give the highlight of entire newspaper, right? So usually their reports representation is this. So first paragraph usually contains the important information in detail, and succeeding paragraphs contain which is progressively less and less important. Newspaper is always like that. For first paragraph, main highlight they have given important points. Second para and third para, they will ask you to refer some other pages because less importance is given to such information. If you are interested, it is up to the reader's interest to look into the second or third paragraph of the information. And the last for the current discussion, book reviewers, book reviews. As just now we have seen the research methodology, the textbook, book reviews are there. The content of the book and the report on the author's intentions. In the preface of the book itself, he was explained what is the content of entire book. In this chapter, or some in technical textbook, in the technical textbook, the author is discussing that in this chapter, so and so is going to discuss. In the second chapter, so on, so etc. and so on. In brief, in the beginning itself, after the preface of the textbook, he is going to write all the little information of every chapter. It is going to be discussed in the entire textbook, right? So book success rate or the failure rate of the book, it depends on the aim of the author, the language which he has used, his way of representing the content in his style, and the any biases or the point of view, it depends on the author success. Okay. Such reviews also happen to be a kind of short report. Even book reviews also, it is a kind of the short report. Usually, suppose if you are submitting your research paper to the journals, usually they will give the review of your entire work. They will send whether we are accepting or any modifications are required. That is also a one kind of the report. So usually the reports prepared by governmental bureaus, special commissions, and similar other organizations are generally very comprehensive reports on the issues involved. So usually in government officials also they uses the report formattings. Okay, use such kind of research usually considered as important research product. Even similarly, if the research scholar, PhD thesis, dissertations, also a form of report writing, usually completed by students in academic institutions. Okay, so today till this you understood about the types of different reports and the layout of the research report. In the next class, we are going to discuss a little thing more about the technical report and the popular report in detail. Okay, any questions? Any questions? Are you there?
Yes,
Is it
sir.
clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Thank you.